right? If we want good, powerful lives, we need to have faith. So that's today's topic, is about faith. Nothing of significance happens without it. And since we are people interested in having great lives, then we really want to get a hold of this thing called faith. Faith is trusting in infinite wisdom, having complete faith in the perfect power within, and possessing complete confidence in the abiding love of God that always holds us. Faith is to trust the divine spirit with your whole being. Just like the proverb, trust in the Lord with all your heart. So faith is at the foundation of every success in life. And the allegorical story of Abraham and Sarah, found in the ancient book of Genesis, can teach us a lot about faith. In fact, it is the ultimate faith story. It shows us what faith is, how faith comes to us, and what it does for us. Well, at the beginning of the story, Abraham was actually known by the name of Abram, and that means faith in the invincible power of God. And at this point in his life, he's an older fellow at the age of 75, and God tells him to get thee out of the country, and he wasn't sending him on a picnic. Abram follows God's orders, taking his wife, known at this point in the story as Sarai, and another fellow also accompanies them by the name of Lot. Abram, Sarai, and Lot traveled all across the Middle East for a long time. Apparently, they would not stop for directions. There was a famine going on in this area, so they scooted over to Egypt. And this was not the best place for Hebrews, so Abram was pretty nervous about what might happen to them. Well, the Egyptians liked Sarai because she was a good-looking woman. Abram thought that this might help him get in good with the Egyptians. So he told Sarai to pretend that she was his sister. And he took her to the Pharaoh's house. And sure enough, Abram was given sheep and oxen and servants and camels and the whole salami because of Sarai. But the Lord was not real happy about this. So he plagued the Pharaoh and his house. And the Pharaoh eventually put two and two together. And he asked Abram, why did you not tell me that Sarai was your sister? That his wife, rather. He was pretty miffed with all of the grief that it caused them, and he sent the two of them packing. Now, Sarai means feeling or emotion, and she represents the feelings that Abram won't acknowledge. Sarai is also Hebrew for contentious, and Lot represents negative thinking. And remember that Abram means faith. So in this story, faith goes on a trip, traveling with contention and negativity. Sounds like one of my childhood vacations. When we are faced with something that scares us, as being in Egypt scared Abram, all too often we do not trust the creative power to take care of us, do we? We come up with schemes like foisting our wife off on the Pharaoh to protect ourselves. We think that we have to manage the situation, and we don't quite believe that God is going to carry it off for us. And often we don't even recognize these emotions of fright within ourselves. We will be in denial that we're scared. We won't face that we can't go on with a marriage. We refuse to see that a job is wearing us down to a nub. looking for the proverbial easier, softer way. We play fast and loose with our morals, packing the wife off to the Pharaoh's house in hopes that it will buy us ease. Partial trust in God and the denial of the cost of doing our foolish negotiations with fate will bring you down in the end, literally or figuratively. And sometimes the price is very high. Abram had faith. He listened to God in the beginning and he started his journey as God asked. But then when he got to a scary place, Egypt, he didn't maintain complete faith. When we temper our faith with negative thinking, we return ourselves to the bondage of fear. We say we believe that there's a power for good in the universe and it supports all that we do. But unless we allow it to do so, even when things don't look good, we are only giving lip service to this awareness of an all-powerful force for our good that is always there for us. You and I both know that there is plenty of trash to stumble over along in the road of life, right? And sometimes our prayers don't seem to be working fast enough for us. And sometimes we don't even recognize that a prayer has been answered until long after the fact. Indeed, sometimes we don't even seem to have the spiritual inspiration that we once had. If we fall into being fearful that our faith will not hold up, we are subject to the influences of the world around us. Now that is a scary place. Abram hands over his personal power to the prevailing power of the land, the Pharaoh, when he hands over his wife. He allows his emotions to take over what is about to happen in his life. To hand over direction of our subconscious mind to the whims of the rest of the world is to hand over our dearest possession. When we lose our faith, when we give it up, even partially, we are lost. Our power is compromised. We become ineffective. Trust is what is needed, but that comes a little later in our story. Now, because Abram has gotten himself in such a mess, he has to take all that he has and get out of the land. And that is what we need to do, figuratively speaking. We need to move to another completely different state of mind. Now, too many times, we literally move away, hoping to change our experience. A geographic. We need to literally move away in our minds, though, to a new consciousness. We need to move to a different state of mind. And it's much cheaper to do it that way. And so Abram grows in this story, and he comes to the time when he recognized that being with Lot is really not good for him. There was much fighting between Lot's cattlemen and Abram's cattlemen. And Abram says one day, look, let's just not have all this strife. Let's split up. Let's look at all the land around here. You can pick wherever you want to go. I'll just go in the other direction. So the time has come when Abram, symbolizing faith, is ready to let go of Lot, symbolizing negativity. Abram is even generous enough to let Lot go wherever he wants. Lot looks around, and to one side there are the lowlands of Canaan, and on the other the lush, well-watered plains of Jordan. And naturally, as negativity will do, Lot judges by appearances, and he chooses the land of Jordan. But he didn't realize that it contains cities full of people that are eventually all destroyed. And that's another story. Abram, on the other hand, goes and dwells in the lowlands of Canaan. And what does one do in the lowlands? You have to look up when you're in the lowlands. And you see very far. And the Lord said, look north, south, and east and west, and all that you see I give you and to your children forever. Now, in this part of Abram's life, Abram finally gives up the negativity and starts looking up. And as he looks up, he takes a higher view of life. And he also looks around, a balanced view and approach to life. And he sees, all that he sees is his, as God says. It's everything that you see and understand is yours. So that's consciousness, that's awareness, everything you become aware of. So are you still looking down at a little patch of ground? Are you still looking down at a little patch, or are you looking up at all around you, becoming more and more aware? Are you seeking disharmony or imperfection of some kind in your body of affairs? What we are seeing becomes very important, because all that you see, God gives to you. All that you're thinking about, God gives to you. Now we really get to the good part of the story. The Lord comes in a vision to Abram, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram says back, oh God, what could you possibly give me? I'm just a sack of blood, always needing your help, and I don't even have a child. See, Abram did have a child by the name of Ishmael, by his wife's young handmaiden, but that didn't count back then. Well, anyway, the Lord said, I will give you a child. And here's the key. At that moment, Abram completely and totally believed that God would give him a child. And this was a major turning point. This was a key. Now let's go over this scene again. Abram sounds pretty pathetic when he says, geez, I'm just a sack of blood. Yuck. Well, he recognizes that he's human and that he needs God. Humility is helpful here. Humility allows Abram to open himself up to God. Often it is humility that gets us to this point in our development. In the midst of some pain we have not been able to manage our way out of, we finally turn to God for help. You know, alcoholics that finally get it that they can't quit on their own will go in quiet humility, seek faith in a higher power. We will turn to God when we get a bad medical diagnosis. Often it is in our extreme need that we are willing to stop struggling with life and give God an opportunity. And this is the way it was for Abram at this point in his life. You see, it was really a big deal for a Hebrew patriarch not to have any children with his wife. But, we do not have to wait until things get really bad to have deep faith in the creative power. This is the good news. Why should we wait? Does it say anywhere that we have to wait? No, of course not. But unfortunately, we make ourselves wait. We hang on to our negativity and doubt like a dog hangs onto a bone just because it's familiar. Don't make desperation a requirement for faith. Well, now the story really gets good. Because Abram has grown his faith to this point. God says to Abram, you are not named Abram anymore. I name you Abraham, the father of many nations. I make thee, and I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations from thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And then God said to Abraham, and your wife shall be named Sarah now, meaning princess. She was the first Jewish princess. And God goes on, I will bless her, and she will be the mother of nations and kings. And God changes their names to Abraham, meaning father of the multitudes, and to Sarah, meaning princess, because their nature had changed. They had grown a true consciousness of faith. They had graduated to a new level of awareness. And it was about time. At this point, Abraham was 100 and she was 90. Their nature, both conscious and unconscious, had been raised to the point that it was capable of producing a multitude of powerful thoughts. And when God tells Abraham all this news, Abraham has a good laugh. He falls on his face laughing, and he says, yeah, right, you're going to give Sarah and me a boy? We can hardly eat our soup. You know? And then he says to God, you must mean my son Ishmael is going to have all these kids. Now, isn't that like us? Even if God comes along and clearly says, I'm going to give you a son, we even have deep faith, just like Abraham, we still can't quite trust that which falls out of the realm of what we perceive rational. Well, God says back to this, yes, indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall call him Isaac. And God tells Sarah that she's going to have a son, and Sarah laughs. She thinks this is ridiculous too. Well, it took 3 visits from angels and a signed affidavit from Waterhouse for the finally to convince Sarah and Abraham that yes, they were really going to have a son. And this is frequently how belief comes to us. It has a good basis, but we can't quite believe that which we can't see. But then if we allow faith to be teased out, and it will slowly blossom. I remember, as my faith deepened, that it was a lot like learning to play the fiddle. The fiddle has no frets on the fingerboard, and when you first place your fingers on the fingerboard, you're kind of feeling around in the dark, listening for the note to sound. And it takes many months of just sort of feeling around until your fingers start to automatically land on the right place, on the string where it produces the perfect tone. And it doesn't just happen on the first try. It slowly comes into tune with some fiddling around. Sometimes it takes a while for faith to come into tune. But if you keep seeking positive evidence for the thing that you want to believe in, it will come. It will come. Sometimes it just takes a while to come to believe something as profound as having a baby when you're 90. Now, when Sarah laughed, God shoots back, why is Sarah laughing? And Sarah gets a little shook up. And she's, I didn't laugh, God, really, I didn't. And God said, yes, you did. Sarah and Abraham, I ask you, is there anything too hard for the Lord? You will have a son next year. And Isaac was delivered to Abraham and Sarah the next year. Now, Isaac means God laughed. And in this case, God had the last laugh. Yeah. I mean, what with all this laughing, you didn't know the Old Testament was such a party, did you? By the way, laughing and joyful acceptance is a great way to approach faith. The greater detachment that you have, the easier things seem to come. I mean, that's been the case for me anyway. I swear, when I stopped caring a lot about promotions at work, they wanted to promote me. When I was no longer afraid of living alone, everybody wanted to live with me. When I stopped struggling to hit the right part on the string of a fiddle, I hit it. At the end of this story, Abraham and Sarah, about them, God asked Abraham to offer Isaac as a human sacrifice. Is the story coming back to you now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of tension as Abraham and Isaac make their way up to the top of the hill to the altar. Isaac asks his father, where is where's the lamb that we're going to sacrifice? And Abraham says to Isaac, God will provide. They trudge on up. And can't you imagine Isaac's surprise and fear as his father places him on the altar? And Abraham raises the knife, ready to kill him and sacrifice. And just as he's about to plunge the knife into his beloved Isaac, an angel of God appears and tells Abram, "Stop! Stop, Abraham!" Thank you. I see that you really do trust me. Bringing me your only son. You don't need to go through with it. And right then a ram appears. He gets stuck in the bushes, and they end up offering the ram as a sacrifice. And Abraham calls the place Jehovah-Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. And the Lord did provide for Abraham and Sarah with nations and kings, and they lived happily ever after. Wasn't that a great story?
Yes.
So this is how it works. We put our complete and absolute trust in the creative power, and it will provide for us, and it will provide richly. That's the meaning. But we often want to know the end before we throw our complete trust into this power, don't we? Yeah. It would have been easy for Abraham to go through the motions of sacrificing Isaac if he had known the end, but he didn't know the end. And we don't know the end when we begin our journey of recovering from alcoholism or cancer, or when we start a new relationship or quit a job to start a new career. We don't know what's going to happen whenever we are about to make a change. And we often stop our journey of faith before it ever gets started because we don't know the ending. Begin your journey trusting, knowing, and expecting that the end will be greater than you could ever imagine. The other important thing to learn about this final part of the story is that a complete radical trust put into action produces complete radical results. It's not about having faith under certain conditions. It's not about believing that the creative power will provide only if such and such condition exists. I will believe only if. I will trust only if. I will accept only if. Tempered faith produces tempered results. Radical faith produces radical, powerful results. Do you get that? Do you get it? It's about taking the steps, taking real action that puts faith into practice, as Abraham was prepared to do so by sacrificing Isaac. That our greater good comes to us. Faith without works is dead. We can sit around thinking, contemplating the concept of faith, and nothing really happens until using it in real life makes faith come alive. Putting it into practice puts power into our lives. All right, so there's one final diamond to this story. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Abraham had finally risen to the state of consciousness that he would let nothing stand between him and his faith in God. Nothing. Not even his beloved son, Isaac. Can you imagine? He was willing to sacrifice this, the beloved gift that had come to him so graciously. We must not let anything stand between ourselves and our greater good. Anything that stands between you and your greater good must be sacrificed. This does not mean that you must sacrifice your fun. It doesn't mean that you must become pious and sacrifice yourself. This means that anything that is separating you from your good must be sacrificed. And we must face what that is. And then we must be brave enough to let it go. If a bottle of alcohol is between us and our good, then we must be brave enough to let it go. If a bad relationship is between us and our good, we must be brave enough to let that go. If a bad job is between us and our good, we must be brave enough to let that go. And that bravery comes from the understanding that God, the everlasting, all-knowing, all-present, perfect power is in you. It is around you, it is for you, and it will always support you. The creative power makes all things new. It will make your life new and great if you believe in it and let it work in your life. The intelligence that is behind every living thing will intelligently guide you to where you want to go. The love that knows no bounds will hold you in its heart and deliver you all that you can comprehend if you believe in it and you let it deliver your good. The perfect presence that is beyond all imagining can do any small thing or any great thing for you, because nothing is too small and nothing is too great for the God that lives in you. And once we understand this, once we get this and test it and prove it for ourselves, nothing will ever confound us again, at least not for very long. And that is really wonderful, and so are you really wonderful, and so it is.